The morning sun cast long shadows across Maple Elementary as Marcus Thompson adjusted his crossing guard vest and checked his watch. 7:45 sharp, same as every weekday for the past 2 years. Children's voices echoed from the playground behind him while parents hurried past with coffee cups and worried expressions about being late to work. Mac positioned himself at the crosswalk, his trained eyes scanning the street with the same awareness that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan. Most people saw just another middle-aged crossing guard in a bright yellow vest, but his movements carried the precise efficiency of his Marine training. Tommy Rodriguez approached the corner alone, his small backpack bouncing with each step. The 7-year-old always walked by himself, grandmother trailing behind at a distance. Mac had noticed how other children seemed to avoid the quiet boy, probably because of the intimidating men who sometimes picked him up after school. "Good morning, Tommy," Mac called out with a warm smile. "Ready to cross safely today?" The boy nodded shyly, gripping his backpack straps tighter. Mac raised the stop sign as the light changed, stepping into the crosswalk to guide the morning stream of students. Before we continue with Tommy's story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Do situations like this happen in your neighborhood? A distant engine roared somewhere down Elm Street, growing louder by the second. Mac's head snapped toward the sound, his military instincts immediately alert. The engine noise was wrong, too aggressive, too fast for a school zone. The blue sedan careened around the corner at 40 miles per hour, its driver slumped over the wheel. Mac's trained eyes immediately assessed the trajectory and timing. The vehicle would reach the crosswalk in exactly 3 seconds, right as Tommy stepped into the street. Time slowed the way it had during combat. Mac's body moved before his mind finished calculating the angles. He dropped his stop sign and launched himself forward with the explosive power that had once carried him through enemy fire. His shoulder connected with Tommy's small frame just as the sedan's bumper swept through the space where the boy had been standing. The impact sent Mac spinning across the asphalt. His military training kicked in as he wrapped his arms around Tommy, using his own body as a shield while they tumbled together. The sedan side mirror clipped Mac's left shoulder with a sickening crack before the vehicle slammed into a parked car 20 feet beyond the crosswalk. Pain shot through Mac's ribs as he rolled to absorb the impact, keeping Tommy pressed safely against his chest. The boy was crying but breathing, which meant he was alive. Mac's vision blurred as he tried to sit up, his left arm hanging uselessly at his side. "Are you hurt, buddy?" Mac gasped, his voice strained but gentle as he examined Tommy for injuries. The child shook his head, tears streaming down his face but no visible wounds. Screams erupted from parents and teachers who had witnessed the collision. Principal Chin rushed toward them while other adults surrounded the smoking sedan. Mac heard sirens in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. "You're going to be okay," Mac whispered to Tommy, fighting through waves of dizziness. His Marine medic training told him his shoulder was dislocated and at least 2 ribs were broken, but the boy was unharmed. The emergency room at St. Mary's Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos as paramedics wheeled Mac through the automatic doors. His left shoulder had been immobilized during the ambulance ride, but he kept asking about Tommy despite the pain medication making his words slur together. "Is the boy okay?" Mac insisted for the 5th time as nurses transferred him to an examination table. "Where's he? I need to know he's safe." Dr. Martinez began examining Mac's injuries while a nurse tried to get his insurance information. Dislocated shoulder, probable fractured ribs, possible concussion. Mac winced as they manipulated his arm, but refused to focus on anything except Tommy's well-being. "The boy is fine thanks to you," Dr. Martinez assured him. "He's being checked in pediatrics as a precaution, but you took all the impact. You saved his life." Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, followed by urgent Spanish voices. An elderly woman's cries pierced through the hospital noise as she demanded to see her grandson immediately. Mac recognized the voice as Tommy's grandmother from their brief morning encounters. Abuela Rosa burst through the curtain with 2 large men in leather jackets trailing behind her. The bikers had tattoos covering their arms and wore patches identifying them as Hell's Angels. Their presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the small examination area. "Where's my Tommy?" Rosa demanded in accented English, her eyes red with tears. "The hospital staff told me some man saved him from the drunk driver." Mac tried to sit up straighter despite the pain, meeting the suspicious stares of the leather-clad man. "That would be me, ma'am. Your grandson is a brave kid. He's going to be just fine." The bikers exchanged glances, clearly wondering what this injured crossing guard wanted in return for his heroic act. The hospital corridor seemed to shrink when Carlos Rodriguez walked through it. Bear stood 6 feet 4 inches tall with arms like tree trunks, his leather vest displaying patches that commanded respect and fear throughout the city. Other patients and staff instinctively moved aside as he approached the examination area where Mac lay injured. His steel-gray eyes locked on Mac with laser intensity. "So you're the one who touched my son," Bear said, his voice carrying the weight of authority that came from leading the most powerful motorcycle club in 3 counties. Mac met his stare without flinching, despite the pain medication making everything slightly hazy. "I kept him from getting hit by a drunk driver," Mac replied simply. Any father would have done the same thing. Bear stepped closer to the bed, his massive frame casting a shadow over Mac. "Really? Most people cross the street when they see us coming. They sure as hell don't risk their lives for our kids. What's your angle, crossing guard?" The 2 bikers flanking Bear tensed, reading their president's suspicious mood. Abuela Rosa clutched her rosary beads while watching the confrontation unfold, unsure whether to intervene. "No angle," Mac said, struggling to sit up straighter despite his dislocated shoulder. "I have an 80-year-old daughter. If she was in danger, I'd hope someone would help her too. That's all there is to it." Bear studied Mac's face for signs of deception, looking for the ulterior motive that experience told him must exist. Nobody did favors for Hell's Angels families without expecting something in return. The silence stretched between them as machines beeped quietly in the background. "You expect me to believe you nearly died for nothing?" Detective Mike Walsh pushed through the hospital room curtain with a clipboard in hand and questions in his eyes. The presence of 3 Hell's Angels members surrounding an injured crossing guard had raised flags throughout the building, prompting calls to the police department. "Mr. Thompson, I need to get your statement about the incident," Detective Walsh announced, his gaze shifting between Mac and the intimidating bikers. "Several witnesses described your actions as extraordinary." Mac shifted uncomfortably on the hospital bed, his shoulder throbbing despite the pain medication. "I just did what needed doing, Detective. The boy was in danger." Walsh consulted his notes, frowning slightly. "According to Principal Chun, you moved with what she described as military precision. She said you assessed the situation and reacted faster than she thought humanly possible." Bear's eyes narrowed with new interest, studying Mac with the calculating gaze of someone who recognized tactical thinking. The other bikers straightened, suddenly paying closer attention to the conversation unfolding before them. "Are you military, Mr. Thompson?" Walsh continued, pen poised over his notepad. "Because I ran a preliminary background check and some interesting information came up." Mac's jaw tightened slightly. "Former military," he admitted reluctantly. "But that was a long time ago, Detective. Right now I'm just a crossing guard who happened to be in the right place at the right time." The detective flipped through several pages. 3 tours in Afghanistan with Force Recon Marines. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Navy Cross for Valor. That's not just former military, Mr. Thompson. That's elite special operations. Bear leaned forward, his entire demeanor shifting as the significance of Mac's background became clear. A decorated Marine hero working as a school crossing guard. Emma Thompson burst through the hospital room door like a small hurricane, her blonde pigtails bouncing as she ran straight to her father's bedside. Tears streamed down her 80-year-old face as she took in the sight of Mac's bandaged shoulder and the medical equipment surrounding his bed. "Daddy, are you going to be okay?" Emma sobbed, carefully climbing onto the chair beside his bed. "Mrs. Peterson said you got hurt saving someone at school." Mac's expression softened completely as he reached out with his good arm to stroke his daughter's hair. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a few bumps and bruises. The doctors are taking good care of me." The Hells Angels members watched this tender scene with growing understanding. Bear observed how gently Max spoke to his daughter, recognizing the same protective love he felt for Tommy. A soft knock interrupted the moment as Abuela Rosa appeared with Tommy holding her hand. The 7-year-old clutched a crayon drawing against his chest, his eyes wide as he approached Max's bed. "Tommy wanted to give this to the man who saved him," Rosa explained, nudging her grandson forward encouragingly. Tommy stepped closer, offering the drawing with trembling hands. It showed 2 stick figures, one large and one small, with a bright yellow sun overhead. "Thank you for keeping me safe," Tommy whispered, his voice barely audible. Emma peered at the drawing with interest, wiping her tears away. "That's really good," she said to Tommy. "My daddy helps kids cross the street every day." Bear watched his son and Mac's daughter begin to talk quietly, seeing how naturally they connected over their shared concern for Mac. Something shifted in his chest as he witnessed this innocent interaction between the children. 3 days later, Mac stood at his crossing guard post despite doctor's orders to rest another week. His left arm remained in a sling, but he refused to leave the children unprotected with only a substitute who didn't know their routines and personalities. The morning air carried the scent of autumn leaves as students streamed toward Maple Elementary. Parents approached Mac with grateful smiles and words of appreciation, many hearing about his heroic action for the first time through the local news coverage. The rumble of motorcycle engines announced Bear's arrival before Mac saw the massive Harley-Davidson turn the corner. The club president parked his bike across the street and walked toward the crosswalk with purposeful strides, his leather boots echoing on the pavement. "You should be resting," Bear observed, stopping a few feet from Mac's position. "That shoulder needs time to heal properly." Mac adjusted his stop sign with his good arm, never taking his eyes off the approaching children. "These kids depend on me being here," he replied simply. A substitute doesn't know that Tommy always looks both ways twice, or that Sarah-chan tends to run ahead of her mother. Bear studied Mac's profile, noting the careful way he tracked each child's movement despite his injuries. The club president had spent the past 3 days thinking about their hospital conversation and what kind of man risked everything for a stranger's child. "I've been asking around about you," Thompson, Bear said quietly. "Principal Chun told me you volunteer for every school fundraiser and never miss a day of work. The other parents say their kids feel safer when you're here." Mac finally turned to meet Bear's gaze, uncertainty flickering in his eyes about where this conversation was heading. Bear leaned against his motorcycle as the last group of children crossed safely into the school building. The morning rush had ended, leaving just the 2 men standing in the quiet street with an unspoken conversation hanging between them. "You lost someone," Bear said, his voice losing its edge of authority. It wasn't a question, but a recognition that came from his own experience with grief. Mac's grip tightened on his stop sign. "My wife, Sarah, died of cancer 2 years ago. Emma was only 6 when we lost her. That's why I took this job, to be here when she needs me." The club president nodded slowly, understanding flooding his weathered features. "Tommy's mother died, giving birth to him. Complications the doctors said they couldn't prevent. I've been raising him with Abuela Rosa's help ever since." For the first time, Max saw past Bear's intimidating exterior to the grieving father underneath. Both men carried the weight of loss and the fierce determination to protect what remained of their families. "People look at us and make assumptions," Bear continued, watching a sparrow land on the school's flagpole. "They see the leather and tattoos and think we're criminals. But everything I do is about keeping Tommy safe in a world that wants to judge him for his father's choices." Max shifted his injured shoulder carefully. "I know something about being judged. 3 tours overseas, and now people think I'm wasting my talents as a crossing guard. But Emma needs stability more than she needs a hero father." The understanding passed between them like a current, 2 single fathers recognizing the sacrifices they'd both made for their children's well-being. The next morning brought troubling news that changed everything. Detective Walsh approached Mac's crossing post with a grim expression and a thick folder tucked under his arm. "Thompson, we need to talk," the detective said, glancing around to ensure no children were within earshot. "That drunk driver from the other day, his name is Danny Vega. He's connected to a drug operation that's been using the area around this school as a distribution point." Mac's military instincts sharpened immediately. His eyes scanned the familiar streets with new awareness, noting potential hiding spots and escape routes he'd never considered before. "Vega was making a pickup when he hit you," Walsh continued. "We think his crew has been using the school zone because cops rarely patrol here during morning hours. Your heroic act may have disrupted something much bigger than a drunk driving incident." Bear's motorcycle rumbled around the corner at that exact moment, as if summoned by the conversation. The club president parked and approached, reading the tension in both men's faces immediately. "What's the problem?" Bear asked, his protective instincts triggered by any threat to the area where his son attended school. Detective Walsh briefed Bear on the drug connection while Mac processed the implications. The school zone that he considered safe for 2 years had been compromised by criminals who viewed the children as convenient cover for their operations. "These dealers have been threatening anyone who might interfere with their business," Walsh concluded. "Now that you've gotten their attention by disrupting Vega's pickup, they might see both of you as problems that need solving." Bear's jaw clenched as the full scope of the threat became clear. That evening, Bear knocked on Mac's apartment door with 3 other Hell's Angels members flanking him. Mac opened it cautiously, his good arm ready to protect Emma, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. "We need your help, Thompson," Bear said without preamble. "These dealers have been poisoning our neighborhood for months. My club wants to handle this the traditional way, but that would bring heat we can't afford with our kids involved." Mac studied the faces of the leather-clad men, recognizing the same protective fury he'd felt during combat missions to secure villages from insurgents. "Come in, but keep your voices down. Emma doesn't need to hear about this." The bikers filed into Mac's modest living room, their massive frames making the space feel cramped. Bear spread a hand-drawn map of the school district on a coffee table, marking locations where suspicious activity had been reported. "Your military background gives us something we don't have," Bear explained. "Strategic thinking that works within legal boundaries. We know how to fight, but we don't know how to build a case that puts these scumbags away permanently." Mac examined the map with tactical precision, his Marine training automatically analyzing sight lines, escape routes, and patrol patterns. The dealers had chosen their locations well, using the school schedule to time their operations when police presence was minimal. "We need documentation," Max said finally. "Photos, license plates, times, and dates. Build evidence that Detective Walsh can use to make arrests that stick in court." One of the bikers, a man called Diesel, leaned forward skeptically. "You think paperwork is going to stop dealers who threaten kids?" Mac met his gaze steadily. "I think putting them in federal prison for 20 years will stop them permanently." 2 weeks later, Mac's plan reached its culmination as coordinated surveillance teams positioned themselves around the school district. The Hells Angels members followed Mac's precise instructions, documenting dealer activities while Detective Walsh prepared arrest warrants based on their evidence. From his crossing guard position, Mac coordinated the operation through discreet hand signals and radio communications. His tactical mind processed multiple moving pieces simultaneously, tracking dealer patterns while ensuring no children were endangered by the police action. Bear's voice crackled through Mac's earpiece. "Target vehicle approaching from the east. 3 occupants. Matches the description from Tuesday's pickup." Mac adjusted his position to maintain visual contact while appearing to focus on his normal duties. "Roger that. Walsh's team is in position. Maintain surveillance and document everything." The operation unfolded with military precision as police units moved to intercept dealers at 4 separate locations. Mac's strategic planning ensured each arrest occurred away from school grounds, protecting the children from witnessing violence or chaos. Detective Walsh approached Mac's position as the last dealer was taken into custody. Your tactical coordination just dismantled a network that's been operating for 8 months, he said with genuine admiration. Where did a crossing guard learn to plan operations like a special forces commander? Bear overheard the conversation and stepped closer, his respect for Mac evident in his expression. He didn't learn it as a crossing guard detective. Marcus Thompson was Force Recon Marines, 3 combat deployments, decorated for valor under fire. The full scope of Mac's military background finally became clear to everyone present. A highly trained special operations veteran had chosen to work humbly as a school crossing guard, using his elite skills only when necessary to protect the children in his care. 3 months later, the morning routine at Maple Elementary had transformed into something special. Mac stood at his crossing post as always, but now Bear's motorcycle was permanently parked across the street, a visible reminder that the school zone remained under protection. The Hells Angels had become unofficial guardians of the area, their intimidating presence deterring any criminal activity while their hearts had been won over by the children they'd sworn to protect. Tommy and Emma had become inseparable friends, their bond forged through shared trauma and maintained through daily adventures. Bear approached Mac's position carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing an expression of contentment that had replaced his earlier suspicion. "You know, I could get you a job that pays 3 times what the school district offers," he said, extending one of the cups. Mac accepted the coffee gratefully, watching Emma and Tommy walk hand in hand toward the school entrance with a group of other children. "Thanks, but I'm exactly where I need to be," he replied. "These kids depend on consistency, and Emma knows I'll always be here when she needs me." The club president nodded, understanding completely. His own priorities had shifted dramatically since meeting Mac, focusing more on being present for Tommy rather than maintaining his fearsome reputation throughout the city. Principal Chun approached them with a warm smile, carrying official-looking documents in her hands. "Mr. Thompson, the school board voted unanimously to create a new position for you. Head of campus security with full benefits and a substantial raise." Mac looked surprised but pleased as he reviewed the paperwork. The offer represented recognition of his true value, while allowing him to continue protecting the children he'd grown to love. If this story moved you, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part or if you've ever witnessed someone put themselves at risk to protect a child.